You know, the Japanese market was down for over 30 years. When a market has been depressed for decades and it starts moving, and there's a lot of money printing and a lot of government buying, the markets usually go up much more than anybody expects. And that's what's happening now. The Japanese market will probably turn into another bubble. And the facts are, Japanese population has been declining for years and the debt goes higher and higher. And figure out what happens when these facts happen.
不動産投資を学ぶなら、楽町。ファーストロジック。
Hello everyone, watching the Raku Machi channel. I am bilingual MC Maya Kanishi. Today we have a very special guest joining us from Singapore. He is known as one of the world's top 3 investors alongside Warren Buffett and George Soros. Please welcome Jim Rogers.
Mushy. I am delighted to be here, Maya.
Thank you so much.
I'm just a simple investor.
No. So I've been told to ask how you are so young and what is keeping your vitality and what are your tips on aging or not aging, sorry.
Get a Japanese girlfriend.
Okay.
I wish. No, I don't exercise every day.
Okay.
I drink Japanese whiskey when I can. Not very often.
Okay.
No, it's Maya, you should know, I guess you do know, when the Japanese do something, they do it better than anybody else.
Wow.
The best whiskey in the world is from Japan now. It's not from Scotland. It's not from Canada, from America. I don't know how you do it, but when you do something, it's always amazing.
Wow.
One of the reasons I love Japan.
Well, thank you so much. So, Mr. Rogers is known for his impressive investments such as investing in Lockheed during the Vietnam War, which brought a 100-fold return, and co-funding the Quantum Fund with George Soros, achieving an extraordinary 4,200% return over 10 years. If you have any remarks on that, Mr. Rogers?
But Maya, that was a long time ago. It's not relevant anymore.
Oh, wow.
You know, you might as well ask me about my first wife or something, or where I went to university. No, it doesn't matter anymore.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So Mr. Rogers, who has achieved great success as an investor and is well versed in Japan, has been warning about the precarious state of Japan's economy in his books, A Warning to Japan and The Great Crash. But in Japan, your warnings don't seem to be taken seriously. Currently, Japanese stocks are doing well, while Chinese stocks, which you favor, are at rock bottom. By the way, Mr. Rogers, I have also read this book. I was very inspired. I was very impressed, and there were a lot of things that I completely agreed with you. But there are some Japanese people who still haven't kind of reached that understanding yet, and they think that Japanese stocks are still kind of doing well, so what's the worry? Do you have any words for them, such kinds of people?
I will tell you, I owned Japanese shares for several years, starting with the typhoon, the gigantic cyclone you had. Then I sold earlier this year. I sold too soon. I made a lot of money, but I certainly sold too soon. Mm-hmm. And so you could say I'm a fool. But I'm a happy fool because I made a lot of money. I can certainly see what's happening in Japan, and I understand why it's happening. The central bank is printing a lot of money and buying shares. Now, that always, if you give me billions of dollars or billions of yen, you and I will have a very good time, I assure you. And that's what's happening now. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know how long it's going to last. The one thing I do know, the Japanese market was down for over 30 years, 35 years. When a market has been depressed for decades and it starts moving and there's a lot of money printing and a lot of government buying, the markets usually go up much more than anybody expects. And that's what's happening now.
Mm-hmm.
The Japanese market will probably turn into another bubble. You had a huge bubble back in 1989 before you were born. And I don't know how long this bubble will last, but it's happened throughout the world, throughout history. Japan's going to have a gigantic bubble.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're good at bubbles, it's going to be a lot of fun. For you, not for me. I'm not good at bubbles. I always sell bubbles.
Thank you so much. So upon reading your books, Mr. Rogers, very carefully, it's clear that your views of the economy are from a historical and long-term perspective. So if I'm not wrong, I think you majored in history.
I did major in history for my first BA, yes.
Mm-hmm. So it seems like you have a very long-term perspective on the economy and just the world. Your worldview is not about. I feel like it's a very historian's point of view, or it comes from a historian's point of view.
Well, Maya, that's partly because I'm not a very good short-term trader.
Uh-huh.
You know, I wish I were. No, I don't wish I were, but I learned early on that I was not very good at short-term jumping in and out.
Uh-huh.
Some people are great at it. Some people are fantastic at it. I'm not. So partly I learned because I had to. I was too dumb to be a great short-term trader. So I learned, and I guess maybe I did have a historian's mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to know what was going to happen over the long term.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Japan's been around for hundreds of thousands of years. And I hope you're going to be around thousands more. I'm worried.
Yes.
I'm very worried, as you know. I mean, the population has been declining for 15 years now. The debt goes up every day. I mean, Japan's going to have very, very serious problems unless something changes. I don't like that. I love Japan, but I have to be realistic. Maya, wait. Where are we going to get our unagi in 30 years?
Right,
Where?
probably from China. It would probably be imported from China then.
But Chinese unagi is not as good as Japanese unagi. Don't you know that?
Yeah.
What kind of Japanese woman are you? Oh my gosh.
Wow.
We all know that
Right.
Japanese unagi.
Right.
Japanese unagi is better than everybody, better than China, Korea. Oh God, Korea, forget it.
Wow. Wow.
Only
So
Japanese.
we were talking earlier that you were so well versed in Japan and Japanese economy and just Japan in general. Where did all this knowledge, how did you gain all of this knowledge?
Well, who knows? First, I want to tell you, I made many mistakes. Made lots. And you want to hear about my first wife? Oh my God, what a mistake that was. No, I make plenty of mistakes. But I fell in love with Japan the first time I went there.
Okay.
And every time since then, it still astonishes me what a fabulous country it is, what fabulous people they are, food, everything. I don't know. If you like something, I guess you'll pay attention.
Right. So today we'll be discussing about the extent and the timing of Japan's economic collapse risk and the future world trends considering the US-China confrontation. So although the Japanese economy has been stagnant for a long time, recently the Nikkei index has been hitting record highs, showing signs of recovery. Why do you believe it will collapse now or very soon?
No, I don't think it's going to collapse soon. I certainly don't think it's going to collapse now. But, Maya, Japan has staggering debt. I mean, the debt goes up every day, you know, and it's just, if you add up the numbers, there's no way that Japan can ever pay the debt. It's so huge. And the population has been going down for 15 years. The population is not going to start going up again. Japanese don't have babies. You don't have many immigrants. So, Maya, I can add.
Right.
I can subtract. I know you can add and subtract. I know you're well educated. So, I mean, it's just simple arithmetic.
Right.
I don't like it. But what else can happen with the population going down every week and the debt going up every week?
Right.
I mean, Now, you can go to Tokyo, and Tokyo will say, oh, don't worry. Don't worry. Tokyo politicians are like American politicians. They lie. They tell you what you want to hear, what they think you want to hear. I look at America's debt, and I get out my pencil, and I know that they cannot pay it. I have 2 young daughters. They're going to have huge problems in their lives.
Right.
Because there's no way. Maya, it's a good time to be an old American. It's not a good time to be a young American because there's no way my daughters will avoid problems in their life.
Right.
But the debt is so high and goes up every day.
I think I read somewhere in your book that 200 years ago, London was the place to be. And then 100 years ago, New York was the place to be. And now maybe is kind of the era of Asia. What do you think about the next 100 years? Which continent do you think is the better place to be living in?
That's an extremely good question. I will see you in the year 2300, and we will drink sake together and figure it out.
I see.
No, I see that Asia. I see what's happening in Asia, not Japan, but I see what's happening in Asia, especially China. China is the only country in world history that's been on top 3 or 4 times. China has also collapsed 3 or 4 times and been a catastrophe, but they're on the rise again. And I don't have an answer yet. There are many countries that will claim that they're going to be, but I just don't know. But I don't have to worry too much. That's my children's problem. And your problem.
That would be true. That would be true. I also read in your book that you said that, Japan is a great country, and that if you were a 65-year-old Japanese, you really have nothing to worry about. And if you are a 10-year-old Japanese, one of your things that you have to do is to learn another language, maybe English or Chinese or Spanish, and get ready or to prepare to leave Japan. And you said for a 40-year-old, your future is bleak in Japan. And I'm right there. So I was very worried when I read this.
But Maya, look out the window. Every day, the debt goes higher and higher, and the population goes down. You can add. I know you can add. And if you cannot add, ask your boyfriend to add. Do you have a husband? Ask your husband. Because all you have to do is add and subtract. What is going to save Japan in 40 years? I don't see anything that will save Japan. Now, maybe something will happen. Maybe there will be big changes. But if they're not, just add it up.
Would you say maybe for somebody who has the ability to leave Japan, that would be a smart idea, do you think?
Well, throughout history, many nations have been built by immigrants. America is a nation of immigrants. Very, very few people who are in America now, or their families were not born there 100 years ago or 200 years ago. So it has happened to many countries. And yes, you can stay. You can stay as long as you want. But if you look at something like Portugal, Portugal was a gigantic success 500 years ago. But not many people are racing to move to Portugal now because it's not the rich, powerful nation it was once before. It happens to many people. Many countries decline, and it's a fact of life. You can stay. You can stay, and you never have to leave, and you're quite happy. I have had Japanese tell me, I had rather not be around. I don't want to live in a country where there are lots of non-Japanese. I don't want to live in a country where I cannot have Japanese food, unagi. I don't want to live without Japanese unagi. And that's fine. That's fine. There are many nations, many people like that. But you have to face facts. And the facts are, Japanese population has been declining for years and will decline for many more years. And the debt goes higher and higher. I'm not sitting here making up things. Just look at a few facts and figure out what happens when these facts happen. I've been traveling for a few decades. I have driven around the world twice, as you may know. I grew up in a small backwoods town, where most people never left, which is fine. But I wanted to see the world, and I started traveling as soon as I could. So for me, I'm a gypsy. My wife says he just wants to go, 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 and I do. So no, I don't think I had any problem at all coming to Asia. I know Asia's the future.
収益物件数ナンバーワン、不動産投資を始めるなら、楽町アプリ、楽町で検索。
So, some argue that with the right to issue currency, as in the case of Japan, government debt at the current level is not a problem. And since there are, maybe Japan is safe because it has a large net external asset. Japanese people have a lot of asset, and maybe we can nullify the debt with the assets is one of the things that people say, or one of the theories.
You're going to nullify the debt. You're not going to pay it. You're going to call up everybody and say, we're not going to pay. Is that what you mean?
The government is going to take up everybody's assets and pay off the debt.
So the government's going to come and say, Maya, we need to go to your closet. They're going to go to your closet, take away everything you've got, and pay it to the foreigners.
Right. That is one of the theories that is going on in Japan, saying that's why our debt issue will be not solved per se, but there is some hope.
Well, Maya, that's a wonderful theory. But it's absurd. It's completely absurd. I mean, I cannot imagine that most Japanese are going to say, you're right.
You're going to take our money.
So take my assets and pay off the foreigner.
Right. Okay.
I don't think that's going to happen.
I think you're completely right.
I mean, that's just many nations in history have gotten themselves in gigantic debt problems. And I mean, yeah, you can debase the currency, you can print money. There are ways to get it out of it. Not very good ways, but sure, if that's what Japan wants to try. But fewer and fewer people will come to Japan, do business in Japan, and many Japanese will move away. And then in 80 years, no unagi.
No unagi.
No unagi, no sake.
Right.
What's left?
So I think regarding the declining Japanese population, if you have any advice for Japanese or the Japanese government or for Japan, how could we increase the birth rate, or do you have any ideas on how we can accept immigrants?
You're not the first country to have this problem. Several European countries have had and do have the problem, and many of them have tried giving incentives to people to have babies. It sometimes works a little bit, but if a country is in trouble, people are smart enough to know that children cost a lot. Babies are expensive and take a lot of effort, and they just don't have a lot of babies. And there are various times in history when nations, for whatever reason, the birth rate goes down, and governments try to change it, but it doesn't work. Eventually it might work. Eventually the population hits so low that people will start having babies again. But I don't have an answer for sure. I'll come and help. You call up Tokyo and tell them, Jim Rogers says he'll come and help. I don't think they're going to pay much attention. They say he's crazy.
Right.
But I don't know. I know many countries have had the problem. Many countries have given incentives. And unless something happens to make it attractive for the families, they don't do it. And I don't know how you do that. And I've read about countries trying it, and I don't know. And the same with the debt. I mean, Maya, look out the window. The debt is skyrocketing every day in Japan. And Tokyo will say, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. We're Japanese. We're a great country. We're the greatest country in the world. Well, okay, that's good. But eventually, somebody has to lend you the money. And eventually, people say, we're sorry, Mr. Tokyo. We don't see how you can pay your debt. We're not going to lend you any more money. And then you have an economic crisis and a collapse and huge problems. This has happened many times in history, not to Japan, but to many countries in the world. And I wish there were a magic wand who would say, oh, let's go down and have a bottle of sake and we'll solve the problem. Doesn't work that way.
Do you think that this economic collapse due to excess debt will happen slowly, or do you think like one day it'll like crash down on us?
Usually the way these things work is the problems they build up over many weeks, months, years even. The debt problem has been building in Japan for a long time. You know what's been going on. The population's been going down for many years. The debt has been building up. And at the moment, Japan has enough people who will lend them money that it's not a problem. They don't think. But the way these things have always worked throughout history is problems get bigger and bigger. The governments have to put in measures to try to paper over the problem or put a bandage on the problem. The debt gets higher. Controls come in, currency controls. They say, if you're going to go on a holiday, you can only take $1,000 of yen to go. Whatever. It just gets worse and worse. And if people want to invest in Japan, there are lots of restrictions, lots of taxes. And so people say, we're not going to invest in Japan. We want to invest somewhere else. And eventually, there are more controls, more regulations, more problems. And in 1923, 100 years ago, Britain was the richest, most powerful country in the world. There was no number two. Everybody knew about Britain, London, pound sterling. 50 years later, it was bankrupt. This is not a typo. The IMF had to fly to London, bail them out because they couldn't pay their bills. That happened in only 50 years, from the richest, most powerful country in the world to completely bankrupt. So this has happened before. You're not the first country that gets into trouble. And I hope you don't get into trouble because I love Japan. But it's happened to many nations.
In such a scenario, which assets do you think will rise and which do you think will fall?
When countries get into this situation, the way you survive, you have to have something which is recognized internationally. Silver. Everybody in the world knows what silver is, for instance. You don't have to explain it. And you have to have something that is easy to transport, such as silver coins, whatever it happens to be. And that's how you survive. You can get out if you need to. If you cross the border, you've got some silver, and the border guard will take your silver because he knows what it is, and he'll let you out of the country. I mean, these things have happened repeatedly. I mean, if you have a wonderful rice farm in Japan, maybe you can eat, but it's not going to help you get out of the country because you cannot take your rice farm down to Narita and take it away. So you have to have something that's easy to transport and that's internationally recognized if you're going to survive.
Right.
I'm not suggesting that anybody do any of this. I'm just telling you how it has worked historically.
So, for example, stocks really wouldn't mean much anymore at that point.
Probably not. Britain, when it went through all of this, it did have some bull markets and some bear markets, but in the end, it was not a good place to keep your money.
What do you think about Japanese real estate in that scenario? I guess similar to the rice paddy example.
Well, I mean, listen, I don't like talking about it, saying any of this because I love Japan. But if the population continues to decline, I mean, who's going to buy your real estate? Yes, some people will. Everybody needs a place to live. But you can already travel around Japan, Maya, and you see schools that are empty because there are no children anymore. You can see farms that nobody's living. Nobody's living there. Nobody's working the farms anymore. I mean, this is a very simple thing. Population is declining, and when population declines, there are consequences. You can figure it out. You're smarter than I am. You can figure it out.
Okay, so you mentioned in your book that real estate would collapse if interest rates rise, but with the Bank of Japan holding many government bonds, it seems difficult to significantly raise interest rates to maintain fiscal balance. In the second part, we'll discuss what we should invest in to prepare for the Japan end scenario becoming a reality, and hopefully we'll be able to hear your views on the future of the US-China confrontation.
MMT, more money today. All you have to do is just print, and everybody's happy. Oh my gosh, what a wonderful life. It's never been successful for very long. Just figure out what they know a lot about and put their money there. Right. Don't listen to somebody on the television. Right. If I say to you, I own silver, don't go off and buy silver. Do not listen to hot tips